Okay, let's unpack this. I want to start with a concept that we see all the time in the history of technology, but we rarely give it a name.
Mm-hmm.
It's called the innovation paradox.
Right.
And it's this, frustrating, fascinating idea that you can build a piece of engineering that is objectively miraculous. Something that basically defies physics, something that feels like actual magic.
Yeah, a technical marvel.
A total marvel. And
Yeah.
yet, as a consumer product, it can be a complete and total disaster.
It's the classic better mousetrap that nobody actually wants to buy.
Yeah.
You build the perfect machine, but you completely forget to ask if anyone actually needs it or can afford it.
Exactly. And there is no better example of this, none, than the subject of our deep dive today.
This is the textbook case.
It really is. We are looking at a device that was predicted to be, and this is a real quote from a very, very smart person, bigger than the internet.
It's an incredible quote.
Not bigger than the iPhone or, the PC. Bigger than the internet.
And that prediction was made by John Doerr, who is, one of the most successful venture capitalists in history. This wasn't some random guy. He put $80 million of his fund's money into this idea before the public ever even saw it.
80 million.
And he wasn't the only one either. The hype was immense.
We are talking, of course, about the Segway.
The one and only.
Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Today, if you say Segway, what comes to mind? Mall cops.
All caps, yeah.
Or tourists.
Tourists in Rome wearing matching, bright yellow helmets, just waddling through a piazza.
Or that scene in Arrested Development with Gob. It's become a joke.
It's a punchline. It's a sight gag. But our mission today is to really strip away all the jokes and look at the reality. Because the story of the Segway is actually this incredible story about the most advanced robotics of the early 2000s.
Absolutely.
A genuinely tragic corporate history, involving the death of the company's owner.
Which is a story that's just unbelievable on its own. And a bizarre afterlife where the brand is now selling, high-speed off-road vehicles.
It is a wild ride. We're going from this secret code named Ginger all the way to a modern vehicle that's literally called the supervillain.
The supervillain.
Yeah.
It's amazing. So let's dive into the source material. We are pulling from the original patent filings, the corporate history of Segway Inc., biographical records of its inventor, Dean Kamen, and of course the technical schematics of the dynamic stabilization system.
And to really get why this thing failed, you have to understand just how high the expectations were. It's crucial. We have to go back to the beginning.
So you have to transport yourself back. We're talking late 90s, early 2000s.
Right. The dot-com bubble is peaking or just about to burst. And technology is seen as this messianic force that is going to fix everything in society.
Total techno-optimism.
Exactly. And the word gets out that Dean Kamen, who is already a legend, he invented the portable dialysis machine, the iBiot wheelchair.
A legitimate genius.
A total genius. Word gets out he's working on something secret, something huge.
And this is where the mystery of Ginger comes in. That was the code name, right?
Right. The two code names were Ginger and, even more simply, IT.
IT.
Yeah. And the hype machine really, really started when a book proposal about the invention was leaked.
A book proposal. Not even the device itself.
No, a proposal for a book about the device. And the leak didn't say what the machine was. It didn't say it's a fancy scooter. It just quoted these titans of industry who had seen it in secret.
Okay, so we mentioned John Doerr, but Steve Jobs, he saw it.
He did. And at least initially, Jobs said it was, and I quote, as big a deal as the PC.
As big a deal as the PC.
Jeff Bezos took a look at it early on. He was involved. You have to understand the kind of pressure cooker this creates in Silicon Valley and in the media.
Oh, for sure. When you have the founders of Apple and Amazon telling the world that something is going to fundamentally change the structure of cities, what do you even imagine?
The public imagination just went wild.
I remember this so vividly. People were speculating it was a hydrogen engine that was going to solve the energy crisis.
Yeah, or an anti-gravity device.
People seriously thought it might be some kind of hover technology or actual teleportation. That was a real theory floating around.
It sounds funny now, but people genuinely thought that. The expectations were set at, redefine human civilization. Nothing less.
And the cultural impact was so huge, so immediate, that South Park actually devoted an entire episode to making fun of the hype.
Before it even launched.
Before anyone knew what it was.
That's such a crucial detail. The episode was just about IT, this mysterious invention, and they portrayed it as this world-altering device that let you travel instantly.
Of course, being South Park, the interface was Well, let's just say it was incredibly uncomfortable and involved some very invasive controls.
Right. But the point stands. When you are being parodied on national television for your hype cycle before you have shipped a single unit,
You are in dangerous territory.
you've set the bar at impossible. You have to deliver a miracle.
Exactly. If you come out with anything less than a warp drive at that point, people are going to be disappointed.
And they did not come out with a warp drive.
No, they did not. So the bubble has to burst eventually. The curtain has to come up. And it finally did on December 3rd, 2001.
A date that was supposed to go down in history.
Mm-hmm.
Alongside the launch of the Model T, Ford, or the Wright brothers' first flight, that was the level they were aiming for.
The location, Bryant Park, New York City. The platform, Good Morning America.
Prime time.
Dean Kamen goes on live TV and outrolls the Segway HT.
HT,
Yeah.
which stood for human transporter.
Right. Later, they would change it to PT for personal transporter.
It's a subtle but important shift.
And let's just talk about the name for a second. Segway. It sounds like Segway, S-E-G-U-E, which, means a smooth transition.
Exactly. A smooth transition from walking to riding. It was clever branding.
Mm-hmm.
But as the sources note, the name Segway is a registered trademark. They really leaned into that concept of fluid, effortless movement.
So they unveil it. And it's this two-wheeled platform with a handlebar. And the first thing everyone watching at home notices is that it doesn't tip over. That was the magic trick.
That is the absolute core of the engineering.
Yeah.
And frankly, regardless of the sales figures or the cultural impact, the engineering is spectacular. We really need to appreciate what they achieved here.
So how did they do it?
Well, the source material explains that the dynamics of the Segway are similar to a classic control problem in robotics known as the inverted pendulum.
Okay, let's unpack inverted pendulum for the non-engineers listening, because this is the fundamental concept behind the whole machine.
For sure. So think about balancing a broomstick on the palm of your hand. You've probably done this as a kid, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
The broomstick wants to fall over. Gravity is pulling it down constantly. So to keep it upright, you have to constantly move your hand.
Right. If it starts leaning forward, you have to quickly move your hand forward to get back under the center of gravity.
Exactly. If it leans back, you move your hand back. You're constantly making these tiny, tiny adjustments.
You are, and you're doing it instinctively. Your eyes see the lean, your brain processes it instantly, and your arm just moves.
Right. But with the Segway, the machine has to do all of that for you. It has to act as the hand, and you, the rider, you're the broomstick.
But doing that mechanically with motors and sensors back in 2001, that was incredibly difficult.
It was state-of-the-art. The Segway uses these powerful brushless DC electric motors, one in each wheel, to constantly adjust the position of the wheels to keep the whole platform and you upright.
So if I lean forward, the wheels spin forward to catch me.
Instantly. And if you lean back, they spin backward. It's a constant high-speed balancing act.
But how does it know? I mean, how does it know I'm leaning forward and not just, standing on a hill?
Sensors. A whole sophisticated array of sensors. The sources detail that it used a combination of tilt sensors and, crucially, gyroscopic sensors.
And these weren't just parts you could buy at Radio Shack.
Oh, not at all. And here's an amazing detail. These sensors were developed by the Advanced Technology Center of BAE Systems.
BAE Systems, the massive defense and aerospace company, the guys who build fighter jets.
The very same. This wasn't consumer electronics grade stuff. This was high-grade aerospace technology being applied to a sidewalk scooter. They used what are called solid-state silicon gyroscopes.
Okay, what is a solid-state gyroscope? When I think of a gyroscope, I think of that spinning top toy, the little metal wheel.
That's a mechanical gyro, right?
Hmm?
These were completely different. They worked using something called the Coriolis effect.
Okay.
Essentially, they vibrated a tiny silicon structure, and when I say tiny, I mean microscopic, like a tiny tuning fork. When the Segway tilted or rotated, the Coriolis force would cause that vibrating structure to shift just a little bit.
And the machine could measure that shift.
With incredible precision, electronics could measure that deflection and know exactly how fast and in what direction the machine was tilting.
So no moving parts, really.
No macroscopic moving parts, which made them incredibly durable and reliable. And get this, the Segway had 5 of these gyroscopes.
5? Why on earth did it need 5?
Well, that's the thing. It didn't. It only needed 3 to balance properly, 1 for each axis of movement.
So what were the other 2 for?
Backups. This is that aerospace influence again. It's called redundancy.
Ah, of course.
If one of the primary sensors failed for any reason, The machine wouldn't just shut off and throw you into traffic. It would seamlessly switch to the backup sensor without you even noticing.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, if my laptop crashes, I just lose a Word document. If the Segway
So
crashes.
you break your nose?
Mm.
Or worse, exactly. The consequence of failure was physical injury, so they built it like a fighter jet. They over-engineered it for safety.
So you have these gyroscopes and tilt sensors, and they're detecting the tiniest shift in the rider's weight.
And that data is fed into the computer, which then tells the motors what to do. And that created the user experience.
The telepathic feeling.
Exactly. The source describes it as the user simply leaning forward to go and leaning back to stop or reverse. Because the sampling rate was so high, I mean, it was checking its own balance 100 times every second. The reaction was instantaneous.
100 times a second.
So it felt, as so many early users described, telepathic. You think, go forward, you lean a millimeter, and you just go.
It really was magic at the time. I remember riding one years and years ago, and it does feel like the machine is reading your mind. You don't feel like you're pushing a throttle or steering a vehicle. You just float.
And that was the genius of Dean Kamen's vision.
Mm.
He said he didn't want a vehicle you drove, he wanted a vehicle you wore, something that became an extension of your body.
So what was powering this thing? Let's look at the power source. Initially, they were using nickel metal hydride batteries, right? Not lithium ion.
Correct. The early models used NiMH batteries. Later, they would switch to lithium-ion, which was a huge, huge upgrade in both range and weight. But in those first-generation models, you were looking at a range of about 6 to 10 miles on a single charge.
Which, for 2001, is actually decent, but it's not exactly, a cross-country tour.
No, absolutely not. And a full recharge took 4 to 6 hours. So it was strictly an urban mobility device, a last-mile solution, as they called it.
I want to talk about how you actually steered the thing in the beginning. Because if you've ridden a Segway recently, or you've seen one in a mall, you lean the handlebars left and right to turn.
Right, that's the intuitive way.
But that's not how the original worked at all.
No, and this is a detail that's often forgotten. The first generation, the Segway HT, it didn't rely on leaning the handlebars for turning. It used a twist grip on the left handle.
Like a throttle on a motorcycle?
Sort of, but it wasn't for speed. It was for turning. You would twist it to vary the speeds of the two motors independently.
Ah, so it was differential steering.
Exactly. If you twisted the grip forward, one wheel would spin a little faster than the other, causing the whole unit to pivot. It was much more mechanical, much less intuitive than the lean-to-turn system that came later.
It sounds kind of tricky.
It was a bit tricky to master, especially while you were also trying to learn how to balance with your body. It was two different mental tasks at once.
And they had different keys for the speed settings, right? I remember this being a big deal. You had to have the right key to go fast.
That's right. There are these little physical electronic fobs, almost like a car key. The source lists 3 specific settings for the original models.
Okay, what were they?
You had the black key, which was the learning or slow setting. It capped you at a very safe 6 miles per hour.
The beginner mode.
Exactly. Then you had the yellow key, which let you go up to 8 miles per hour with faster turning. And then you had the red key.
The red key. The danger zone.
The key to unlocking its full, blistering top speed of 10 miles per hour.
10 miles an hour. It sounds so slow now, but standing 8 inches off the ground on a narrow platform, I bet 10 miles an hour feels pretty quick.
Oh, it does. It feels plenty fast.
Yeah.
It's about 3 or 4 times faster than an average walking speed. And that was the whole pitch. Walk, but faster and without sweating.
But the launch wasn't without its problems. We have to talk about the recall. That must have been a huge blow.
Yes, September 2003. This was a significant blow to the early momentum for sure. The source notes a recall was issued because of a very specific danger related to the battery.
Okay, what was the issue? Did they catch fire?
No, nothing like that. It was about what happened when the battery got critically low. If users ignored the repeated low battery warnings.
Which people do all the time.
All the time. If you ignored the warnings, the machine could suddenly execute an emergency shutdown.
And on a self-balancing machine, shutdown means stop balancing.
Which means the rider face plants instantly. If you are moving at 10 miles an hour and the machine suddenly just gives up and goes limp.
Momentum takes over. You become a projectile.
Exactly. It was a serious safety flaw.
So they had to fix that, obviously.
They did. They issued a software update. They added a feature called speed limiter or pushback.
What's that?
Yeah. If the battery was getting low, or if you were trying to accelerate too fast or go too steep a hill, the machine would actively tilt the handlebars back towards you.
Oh, So it forces your weight back?
It forces you to slow down. It feels like the machine is fighting you, like a horse rearing up.
That's a terrifying sensation, actually. The robot saying no?
It is, but it's a lot better than the power just cutting out completely and sending you flying.
Fair point.
Mm.
So that was the first generation. That ran from 2001 to about 2006. But then came the big upgrade, the lean steer era. This is when the Segway really became the machine that most of us recognize today.
2006 was a pivotal year for them. Segway Inc. actually discontinued all the previous models. They just wiped the slate clean and introduced two new ones, the i2 and the Bi2.
The i2 and the Bi2, very Apple-sounding names for the time.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And the single biggest change was the introduction of lean steer.
So gone was the twist grip.
Gone. Completely gone. Now, the entire handlebar stock pivoted left and right from the base. So if you wanted to turn left, you just leaned your body and the bar to the left.
Which is how your body wants to turn anyway.
It's completely natural. It aligned the steering mechanism with the balancing mechanism. It made the whole experience totally cohesive. You lean forward to go, lean back to stop, lean left or right to turn. One simple, intuitive system.
It completed that telepathic feel they were going for, and they bumped up the specs too.
Significantly. The top speed went up to 12.5 miles per hour. A nice little boost. But more importantly, the range.
Right. They switched to lithium-ion batteries.
They did. And with the better batteries and the addition of regenerative braking so it would capture energy when you slowed down, the range jumped to 15 to 25 miles.
That is a huge jump. 25 miles is a legitimate commute for some people. You could go from the suburbs to downtown and maybe even back.
It is. It moved it from a last mile device to a last few miles device.
Yeah.
It really opened up its potential utility. And they also introduced the info key.
The info key. This was like a little digital dashboard, right?
But wireless. Yeah, a wireless controller that you could keep in your pocket or clip to the handlebar. It showed your speed, your trip odometer, your battery life. But it also acted as the security key.
And it had that security mode.
Which was actually quite clever. If you parked your Segway somewhere and put it in security mode, it would lock the wheels.
Oh.
But if someone tried to move it, not only would a loud alarm go off, but the wheels would actively resist the movement. The motors would engage and shudder and fight against being rolled away.
A rebellious little robot. I love that.
It was a very advanced piece of kit for 2006.
Now, before we move on to the business side of things, the expert in you will love this part. The source material lists a whole bunch of different model variants from that pre-2011 era. We know the i2 and the Bi2, but there were some deep cuts.
Oh, for sure. There were a lot of distinct flavors of Segway. Before the i2, you had the original i167, and then there was the e167.
The e167, what was special about that?
It had an electric kickstand.
An electric kickstand. That feels like peak luxury, or peak over-engineering.
A little of both, maybe. Then there was the P133, which was a much smaller platform with smaller wheels. It was less powerful, maxing out at 10 miles per hour, and it was designed perhaps for lighter users or for use in tighter indoor spaces like a warehouse.
And the XT, what was that?
The XT was the precursor to the Bi2. It was really the first Segway specifically designed for recreation. It had those big, knobby, rugged tires for off-road use.
And we can't forget the golf aspect. They really tried to make that happen.
Oh, we cannot. The Bi2 SE Sport had accessories. There's a whole third-party company called Seg Solution, and it was all aimed at the golf market. The idea was to replace the big four-person golf cart with a personal stand-up carrier for your clubs.
I mean, it makes sense on paper. It probably speeds up the game, less damage to the turf. But again, we didn't see a mass takeover of the world's golf courses.
No, we did not. And that brings us right to the business reality. Because despite all this amazing innovation, despite the aerospace sensors and the telepathic steering, the company was really struggling to find its footing.
It just wasn't selling.
It wasn't selling in the numbers they needed, and this leads us to the end of the Dean Kamen era.
Right. So this is section 3, the business roller coaster. Dean Kamen, the inventor, the man behind the entire vision, he sells the company in December 2009.
He sells it to a British businessman, a millionaire named Jimmy Heselden.
And this is where the story takes a turn that plays out like a Greek tragedy, and I really don't use that term lightly here.
It is genuinely tragic, and the irony is just...
Yeah.
It's almost unbelievable. So Jimmy Heselden buys the company in December 2009. He's a self-made man, a philanthropist, a former coal miner. He clearly believed in the product and its potential.
Okay.
But less than a year later, in September of 2010, disaster struck.
What happened?
Heselden was running a Segway. The reports say it was a rugged country version, so likely in a Bi2 model with the off-road tires on. his private estate in Yorkshire, England.
Okay.
He was riding near a cliff path that was above the river wharf.
And he went over the edge.
He plunged 80 feet into the river below. He was found dead.
The owner of the Segway company died while riding a Segway.
It's hard to overstate how much of a shadow this single event cast over the brand.
I remember reading about it when it happened, and it just felt like, it felt like proof to all the skeptics.
It reinforced every single negative public perception of the device. It was already seen as expensive and, maybe a little bit dorky. Now it was perceived as potentially dangerous.
The logic is brutal. If the owner of the company, a man who presumably knew the machine better than anyone on the planet, could have a fatal accident on one.
What chance did the average consumer have? It was a PR nightmare that they could never really recover from.
Just an awful, awful story. So the company is in turmoil. The new owner is gone. And a few years later, a new player enters the scene, this time a rival.
Enter Ninebot. Ninebot was a robotics startup based in Beijing.
And they weren't exactly friends at first. This wasn't a friendly merger we're talking about initially.
Oh, far from it. This was a hostile relationship. Ninebot was making similar self-balancing scooters, what many would call knockoffs. And Segway Inc. was not happy about it at all.
The source mentions a pretty serious legal battle.
Yes. In 2014, Segway Inc. filed official complaints with the U.S. International Trade Commission. Their claim was very straightforward.
Patent infringement.
Exactly. They claimed that Ninebot and several other companies were infringing on Segway's patents and copyrights.
So Segway wanted to block them from the U.S. market.
They wanted to ban the imports of all these competing scooters into the United States. They were trying to use their intellectual property as a shield to protect what little market they had. We invented this. You can't sell your version here.
But Ninebot, they had some serious backing.
Oh, serious backing. They had just raised $80 million from Xiaomi, one of the biggest tech companies in China, and from Sequoia Capital, a legendary Silicon Valley venture capital firm.
So you have Segway, the fading American pioneer, trying to sue Ninebot, the well-funded Chinese upstart. And how did that resolve itself?
In the classic ultimate corporate power maneuver. If you can't win the lawsuit, just buy the plaintiff.
Wow.
In April of 2015, Ninebot announced that it had acquired Segway Inc.
They just bought them out.
Completely. The lawsuit just vanished because the two companies became one. And this shifted the entire trajectory of the company. It broadened the scope from just making the Segway PT to a whole range of other personal transportation devices.
But for the Segway PT, the classic original two-wheeler, the writing was on the wall.
It took another 5 years, but yes. In June of 2020, the announcement finally came down. Ninebot announced it would no longer make the Segway PT. Production was ending.
The end of an era. And looking back at the sales stats now, they're sobering.
The number is 140,000 units.
Yeah.
That is the total sales figure over the entire lifetime of the product.
Over almost 20 years.
From 2001 to 2020. 140,000.
I mean, to put that in perspective, Apple sells that many iPhones in like an hour, a morning.
It's probably less than an hour, yeah. Even for a vehicle, that's a tiny, tiny number. And the source notes that in its later years, the Segway PT line made up only 1.5% of the company's total profit.
1.5%.
It had become a legacy product, a footnote in its own company.
So we have to ask the big question, why? Why did it fail? Why wasn't it bigger than the internet? Why didn't it redesign all our cities?
The source material and, just looking back, it points to several key factors that all kind of converged. First and foremost, the price.
Oh, the price. It launched at $5,000 US.
$5,000.
Yeah.
In 2001 money, that's roughly, $7,500 or $8,000 today?
That was just an astronomical sum for a device that couldn't protect you from the rain, couldn't carry a passenger, and you couldn't legally ride on the street or the sidewalk in most places.
It was legislative chaos. And, Steve Jobs was right about that. The source mentions that Jobs, after his initial hype, later criticized it heavily. He asked Kamen, "You're sure your market is upscale consumers for transportation?" He saw the flaw in that pricing strategy immediately.
He knew. It was priced like a decent used car, but it had the utility of a very expensive bicycle. It just didn't make economic sense for the average person.
Not at all. You could buy a really nice Vespa scooter and still have thousands of dollars left over.
Okay, so price is number one. What's next?
The learning curve.
Right. It wasn't as plug and play as promised.
No. You had to learn to trust it. You had to learn to balance in a new way. And when that trust was broken, it was very, very public.
We mentioned the tragedy with Jimmy Heselden, but there were all those other high-profile accidents that really hurt the image.
The source lists some huge names. George W.
I
Bush.
remember that photo. It was everywhere. The President of the United States falling off a Segway at his parents' home.
Yep. He apparently tried to get on it while it was turned off or something like that, and down he went.
Yeah.
Then you have Usain Bolt.
The fastest man in the world.
Gets run over by a cameraman on a Segway.
Oh, that's right. He wasn't even riding it. He was the victim of one.
Exactly. It was at the World Athletics Championships. The cameraman on the Segway hit a trackside rail, lost control, and just bowled right into the fastest runner on the planet right after he won a race.
It's like a comedy sketch.
It really is. And it reinforced this idea that these things were clumsy or hard to control or just generally dangerous. Ellen DeGeneres had a mishap on her show, Ian Healy, the Australian cricketer. Each of these little incidents just chipped away at that aura of high-tech perfection.
And finally, there's the competition. The thing that actually did solve the last mile problem.
The electric kick scooter.
The simple solution.
It turns out you don't need a complex $5,000 self-balancing robot with 5 gyroscopes to go a mile down the road. You just need a board, 2 wheels, a handle, and a battery.
It's so much cheaper, it's easier to understand, and if the battery dies on a kick scooter...
You just kick. It doesn't throw you on your face. It's the triumph of simplicity and good enough.
So the Segway PT didn't disappear entirely from public life. It just found a very specific niche.
A very specific and very small niche. Basically, tourism and security.
Segway tours.
A staple of tourist-heavy cities like Florence or Paris or Washington, D.C. And it makes perfect sense in that context. You can cover way more ground than walking, you don't get tired, and the tour group stays together.
And the high price point is absorbed by the rental fee. You're not buying it, you're just renting it for an hour.
Exactly. And the other niche was police and private security.
Right. The source notes that the 2008 Summer Olympics in Beijing used special police forces on Segways to patrol the grounds.
And the Stockholm police adopted the I-2 model in 2018 for patrolling the narrow cobblestone streets of the Old Town.
So why police? Is it just so they don't have to walk as much?
It's partly about reducing fatigue over a long shift, for sure. But the bigger advantage is height. When you're standing on a Segway, you're about 8 inches taller than everyone else.
Ah, that makes sense. A commanding view.
You have a commanding view of the crowd, and just as importantly, the crowd can see you. It provides a certain kind of authority and presence that walking or even riding a bicycle doesn't.
And they even marketed them to emergency medical services.
Yeah, in 2011, the idea was for first responders to get through dense crowds at a concert or a marathon quickly. So it found a home where standing higher and moving efficiently without getting tired were worth that $5,000 price tag.
But that was never going to be the mass market revolution they had promised.
Not even close.
So the PT is gone. But as we said at the start, the Segway brand is very much alive and kicking. This brings us to Section 5. Segway lives on.
This is all the Ninebot influence. They successfully pivoted the brand from being about a single revolutionary product to being a broad mobility manufacturer.
Let's look at the modern product lineup, because it is wildly different from Dean Kamen's original vision.
It is unrecognizable. First, you have the consumer scooters that are sort of related to the original, the Ninebots by Segway E+, and the Mini PRO.
The Mini PRO is interesting. That's the one without the handlebar, right?
Right. It's a smaller, self-balancing scooter. But instead of a big handlebar, it just has a knee control bar in the middle.
I've seen those. You kind of steer it with your knees.
Exactly. You lean into it with your knees to turn. It's the spiritual successor to the PT, but it's much smaller, much lighter, and drastically cheaper.
And then there are the kick scooters, the ones we see on every street corner in every major city.
Yep. The GT1, the GT2, they call these super scooters. They're high-speed, high-performance. And the ZT3 Pro. This is where the sales volume is now. This is what people actually buy to commute.
And they also kept the robotics dream alive, just a little bit.
It's just a tiny bit. There's the Segway robot, which is basically a mini PRO with a head and arms, and Lumo, which is this little robot companion that you can also ride. Bit of a novelty.
But here is the pivot that really surprised me when I was looking at the source material. Power sports. Segway is now making farm equipment.
Basically. In February 2022, they officially entered the UTV market, utility terrain vehicles.
So we are talking about those four-wheeled buggies you see on farms or on trails, like a Polaris or a Can-Am.
The exact same market. They have ATVs, all-terrain vehicles, like the AT5 and AT6. They have SSVs, which are side-by-sides. And check out the names they're using.
Right, you mentioned this. They have a model called the supervillain.
The supervillain. That is a long, long way from the friendly human transporter.
The SX-20 supervillain hybrid. It's a high-performance, aggressive off-road machine.
And dirt bikes.
And electric dirt bikes,
Right.
the Dirt e-bike X160 and X260, and full-on electric motorcycles like the Zyber and the E300 SE.
This was so fascinating. They went from, we are going to save the environment and redesign cities with this gentle, silent, balancing transport, to
Let's tear up some dirt trails on a machine called the supervillain.
it's a complete and total reinvention. They took the valuable parts,
Yeah.
the battery tech, the motor tech, and the brand recognition, and they applied it to markets that actually existed and were willing to pay for performance.
So they stopped trying to create a new human behavior balancing on a sidewalk and started serving existing behaviors like riding dirt bikes and commuting on kick scooters.
A much smarter business strategy, it turns out.
So let's bring this all home, the outro. We've gone on this journey from the secret code name Ginger, the bigger-than-the-internet hype, to the big reveal in Bryant Park.
We've seen the incredible engineering of the inverted pendulum, those aerospace-grade BAE systems, gyroscopes.
We saw the truly tragic death of Jimmy Hesselden, which cast such a dark cloud, and finally the acquisition by Ninebot and the pivot to kick scooters and ATVs.
You know, it's a journey that really validates what Steve Jobs said later on. He initially bought the hype, but then he famously said he thought it sucked.
Right.
He criticized the design, but crucially, he criticized that upscale price point, and he turned out to be 100% right.
Yeah.
The technology was amazing, but the product market fit just wasn't there at $5,000.
But, and this is the key takeaway for me, the Segway PT might be gone, but its DNA is absolutely everywhere.
Absolutely. The Segway PT paved the way. The battery technology, the efficiency of the electric motors, the very idea of personal electric mobility in a city Segway started that entire conversation.
The electric scooter boom that we see in cities today, you know, with the Birds and the Limes and all the privately owned scooters, that exists in the wake of the Segway.
It does. It normalized the idea.
The brand Segway is now, ironically, more associated with the electric kick scooters you see on every corner than the two-wheeled chariot that Dean Kamen originally invented.
And in a way, you could argue that's a kind of victory. The mission of changing urban transport ultimately succeeded, even if the original vehicle failed to do it.
Which brings us to our final thought for you, the listener. The Segway was supposed to solve the last mile problem. It failed. But 20 years later, electric kick scooters solved it using much, much simpler technology.
So here's the question we want to leave you with. Is it better to be the pioneer who invents the complex, perfect, over-engineered machine, the Segway PT? Or is it better to be the one who comes along later and simplifies it for the masses, the kick scooter?
Because sometimes revolutionary is just code for too early or maybe just too complicated.
Sometimes the simple broomstick is better than the balancing robot.
That's all for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Stay curious.